Welcome to the masterclass series in health, physical, and driver education. This masterclass series recognizes the immense responsibility you carry as an educator. This series of videos are presented by your peers, fellow educators who are passionate about sharing their knowledge and experiences with you.
Hi, welcome to Adapted Health. You're actually here in part 2. If you did not get an opportunity to see part 1, we highly encourage you to. My name is Liz Metz, and I'm here with my colleague Emily Clowser. We're both adapted PE teacher specialists in Frederick County, Maryland. We're here today to talk and follow up from our part 1 session, which was all about creating adapted health materials, the differences between adaptations and modifications to your health materials and what those look like in comparison to general ed curriculum. But today we want to talk to you about how to bring everything together. Who are all the other important people to discuss and talk with and collaborate in order to make a successful adapted health class, whether that be an inclusive class or just a general ed class with students who need help. So we're going to talk about that and then look at it all together and what does an entire unit look like? How can you structure your class day to day? How do you schedule your class within your year-long plans? So let's get started with that and talk about who's important to discuss with.
So, we focus a lot on creating these resources, but we created these resources, not just Emily and Liz. So Liz, you want to talk a little bit about what we did with other staff to create these and come up with ideas?
I'd love to. So Emily and I learned early on in this department that it's super important to talk and discuss and not make things harder, but work smarter by figuring out what it is exactly that our PE teachers need, what is it that we already have, and how can we meet the needs of our students better. So our first thing is, if you are new to this and you have a group of students coming in for health that you haven't taught before, if you are not their PE teacher before, please collaborate with that PE teacher. Find out information about the student from them. What did they like? What did they not like? What motivated them to work in class? Use the relationship with the PE teacher. It might be for yourself. It might be your relationship or another one to help motivate that student. A lot of our students would much rather stay in the gym and get to move and be active and have fun. Less of them want to sit at a desk and work through health curriculum. So using that relationship in PE and maybe having time, if they complete tasks or they finish their work early, that they can go and do an activity with that PE teacher in that space. So also discuss ways with the PE teacher that you can integrate some of this health material into PE class activities. If they're having health and PE at the same time, that's a great relationship and collaboration to make, where maybe the warm-up or the main activity could be a fun one. So healthy eating is a great way. I know a lot of PE teachers have plenty of activities to teach and discuss and learn about healthy eating. So you could be doing that in the gym, and then you could also be going into it in more depth when you're in the health area. Also, case managers. If you don't know a student's case manager, you don't know their name, you never met them, you need to go figure out who they are today. It is super important to have a relationship with them because they know everything that there is to know about that student's IEP, about their disability, what supplemental aids and supports they might need, and what academic level they are learning at. Having a student in PE can be completely different when it comes to health. A student might really succeed and do wonderfully in the PE setting, but struggle at accessing the academic cognitive information. So knowing what level, is it a student that you should be adapting the materials, or is it a student you should be providing modified materials to, is very, very important. They also can help with strategies to sustain a student's attention. What do they need? Do they need fidgets? Do they need movement breaks? Do they need things to be in close proximity? All different types of strategies to help gain their attention. As I said before, discuss those levels of modifications or adaptations, and then work together. Sometimes the case managers might already have stuff pre-created or things that might be useful for you and the student while they're in health class. Emily, are there anybody else when you were in the schools and you were working that you discussed or collaborated with to help with your modifications and adaptations for health curriculum?
Yeah, Liz, I think case managers were definitely a huge help. But in addition to that, working with the paraeducators or the SEIAs, as we sometimes call them, they spend a lot of time sitting next to a child in class all day or a group of students in a specialized program. So they have a better understanding of where those students are cognitively. And I think sometimes we're so quick to say, we're in 7th grade health. Everybody's doing 7th grade health. That's great that you want to teach 7th grade health curriculum, but how are we meeting those students where they are academically and cognitively? And SEIAs, paras, case managers, and really anyone who supports that child as part of the IEP team can be helpful. So they can help us realistically understand what the child could do if I gave them 3 or 4 examples of those worksheets for Sun Safety, which one's appropriate for Liz, which one's appropriate for Emily. And then you can have that figured out before PE class or health class. That's really important. So I think having time to talk to them, and obviously communication is huge. So use their advice, listen to them, ask good questions. And this is an example of ways to communicate with them. We always say that respect goes a long way when you're working with other staff members. And I'm a huge Aretha fan, so that word will be in every presentation I can put it in. But here's some ways to talk to them, some training activities, and some other ways to just kind of motivate SEIAs or paras to be a little bit more involved, because they are really good resources for your instruction. And then health teachers, we in our county do have some health teachers that are alone. They might be the lone health teacher in their whole building. But I think remembering that we're a place where people can get resources, but so are other health teachers. So finding ways to make groups of teachers, we call them PLC groups in our county, or can you get in a Schoology group or whatever online learning platform you might have? Can you make a folder together and ask people to put resources in? If there's a hot topic that's more sensitive that you're uncomfortable teaching, maybe asking for some help with that or different resources. So there's health teachers all over the state and the county that would probably share resources. There are a lot of things on Twitter and a lot of things online. So it is important to not feel like you're the only person that knows the content and can teach it, because I think there are a lot of other people. Now, we've talked about how to create those visuals, how to kind of plan with everybody, but then we really have to develop those resources. And that was a massive undertaking, Liz. So I'm going to let you talk about that.
Yes. So we've talked about the nitty gritty, the down and dirty, the what are you giving them at their desk, what materials they need. But we need to look back at the big picture. How do you even create these classes? What is the class structure? How are we going to bring in cross-curricular and literacy and all those great things? So it's really important first to start with your class schedule. Every county is a little bit different. Every state's a little bit different. For us, we go from switching from daily PE for in the middle school to 9 weeks of health in a classroom. And for our students in specialized programs, it's really difficult to go from all that movement to then sitting for 9 weeks at a desk. And on occasion, it does have negative effects to their overall access and success. And it can kind of creep into the other areas of the day when they know they're not going to get PE. So really being purposeful in how you create a class structure that meets the needs, keeping it fun, but also keeping it productive and a great learning environment is super important. So here are some things that our teachers have done. We try to create movement-based lessons. So we have some, you might have seen them before. I use them in our slideshows. If I want students to answer yes and no, we're not going to say yes, no. We're not going to do thumbs up and down. We actually have to do specific body parts. So it might be elbows in the air is a yes, foot out at your feet, out of your desk is a no. You can have them stand up. If they think the answer is whatever that you put on the screen, maybe they do jumping jacks or maybe they do squats. So A, they're getting movement. B, they're giving you answers of their understanding, and you are able to see amongst and very quickly and get an idea of everybody's understanding, not just one student. So those are really great ways to create lessons. Another way is to do a certain percentage of time with health and then a certain percentage time in the gym or movement. So specifically creating your class, your day-to-day schedule with maybe 75% of it, you're doing health work, and then certain 25% you're going out and you're moving, walk and talk, going to the gym, going to a movement room, depending on what you have access to. Some schools like to do Friday movement days. So they get a lot in Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, it's not that they're just going to go play and have free days, where we know so many PE teachers and people like to do that. It's not a free day. It's a movement day. So now we're going to go in and we're going to continue to talk and discuss about those health content, but we're going to do it in the gym and movement. Kind of like I said earlier with nutrition, healthy eating, super fun, lots of great lessons that you can do in the gym with equipment, discussing and learning and reiterating our content for healthy eating, but you're doing it using PE activities. Some of our schools do 4 days of PE and 1 day of health for a year. Now, our year is 36 weeks of school. And as I said earlier, we have 40 days of health if they were to do it a term. So obviously that means a few of the weeks of the year, you'd have to double up on your lessons. But if you kept that schedule going, you could get a whole year's worth of, at least at middle school and then in the high school, if you have the opportunity, a whole year's worth of content while doing it in the gym, or 4 days in PE, 1 day in health. And then some schools have tried doing 1 or 2 week health rotations. So instead of my term being term 1 would be in the health room, Emily's term, she's going to take term 2, take all her kids to health room, so-and-so term 3, and so forth. We do it in rotation. So we're not doing 9 weeks of just sitting. We might do 1 or 2 weeks in the health room, and then we go to the gym, and another teacher goes in the health room. And you continuously go on that cycle, getting little bits and pieces and a little bit larger chunks, not just a day here, but 5 days, 10 days in the health room before going back to PE. So those are some things that have worked. It really comes down to your student population, your school, what you can physically accommodate, your schedule can accommodate. Another really important part of this is not just the schedule within the year, but your class schedule. What is your class, your day-to-day activity going to look like? You need to physically arrange the environment. We do not like it when we walk into an inclusive class of health and we see all of our specialized program students sitting at one table together, and then all of our gen ed students somewhere else. That is not inclusion. That is not using the relationships between students to create an inclusive environment. So you need to group your students according to their ability, with general ed students there to help model, provide feedback, provide encouragement. Oftentimes our teachers will flank students with 2 supportive gen ed students on either side, giving them opportunities to kind of ping pong back and forth and support that student. And then also getting to know your students, you can group them for certain projects into teams that have certain abilities. We don't want all the bubbly, super outgoing students all together with just a few of our special ed students. We kind of want to spread them out so they're with certain groups. And also those gen ed students who are bubbly and very interactive and comfortable working with a student with special needs can help some of their general ed peers get that comfort level. And it really can be a nice way to develop social relationships and friendships while also reiterating the health content and helping them learn it all together. So I talked about physically the environment, but then Emily, what about the actual day-to-day class schedule? Are there any things that you have seen work really well amongst your schools?
I think it's really important, like you said, to make sure students are mixed together and there's not this group and that group. As I've seen a lot of great, we've seen like where they've gone up and performed like a skit. We've seen presentations that are Google Slides. We see posters made, and all of that is done together. So giving students an opportunity to be included from day one, I think, is really important. So setting that class schedule up that way, the structure is that way, the routines are that way. And by the time they spend 40 days together, it's natural. Everything just seems like they're all one class and they're having a great time together. So it is nice to see that. And a good way to use those paras and those SEIAs is once you've kind of established those groups of students, however their little learning space is, spread them out. Don't have them sitting in the back because, they're taken care of and students are fine. The students still need support. There's still supplemental aids and services on their IEP or accommodations on a 504 that need to be met. So it's important to use them. So facilitate their role in that class as well. And then also incorporating movement-based lessons, as Liz said. I think a lot of us learned that during COVID, the this or that, but you can still use that in the classroom. It's a great way to have students answer questions. And you might have them always do the same activity for yes and always do the same activity for no, and then throw in some other things as you go through different topics. You could, answer questions about healthy eating or hygiene and different topics that you've gone over and have them demonstrate some form of movement that ties into that, or that just gets their heart rate up for a brief time and then they can get back to the health work. So we're always looking at ways, I think, Liz, to transform our inclusive health class at the middle school level. And we're definitely trying to improve the high school one, because I think it's a lot of like sit, talk at you. But using playlists is one thing we learned from our teachers. And you can put a bunch of activities or assignments together, and students can be a little bit more independent as they work through different playlists. So I think that was a little bit newer. It was newer to me. I don't know about you, Liz, but it was newer to me during COVID. And I think it gives the students some independence when everybody has their own Chromebook. But I also think that you could easily tweak these activities so it looks the same and everybody thinks they're doing the same work. And then you're throwing in some adapted, modified activities. So this is just an example of brushing teeth. It ends with a quiz. So this could be assigned to a certain student or a whole class. But again, you want to make sure you're using those adapted or health resources appropriately. And there's different things that you could click on. The student would go through the work, and then ultimately they would take a quiz. So one of the things that Liz and I learned about during COVID was teachers creating playlists. So we do like the idea of having a playlist for a student. You can assign it to the whole class, or a certain playlist could be assigned to a student based off what their need is. So that's why you could use those adapted or modified resources. And every student has a device and they're working through their own activities. So there is a video on here that students can watch. And then obviously there's worksheets and activities that align with that video. So we're talking about brushing teeth. And the students can drag the smiley face or the sad face. When should you brush your teeth? So in the morning before school, should you brush your teeth? Should you brush your teeth after PE class? You could put a smiley face or a frown face. You should brush your teeth before you go to bed. After playing your favorite game, after eating, after reading a book, and before bed, if I already said that one. So this is an interactive activity, but again, cutting and pasting is fine too if you don't have access for students to have a one-to-one device. But an SCIA or para could also sit with two students and go through this together. They're both answering the questions and getting the content. And on this playlist, there's a video, and then it ends with a quiz that students can take. And it's just a nice way for them to have everything there for them. So maybe class started with those PowerPoints that Liz talked about earlier, and then students break off and they can do their own playlists. There's also a feelings worksheet here that we have that shows an example of watching a video, and then students can answer with different faces here. So this could be assigned to students. This worksheet could be made more difficult or easier depending on who the students are and what they're working on. So that's just one way to structure a class, giving some independence with those playlists. But then, as we said before, also putting students in small groups or with partners. We have something called extended learning time in some of our middle schools. So students can come together. If it's ELT 1, that means first period is that ELT time. So it has been a way for us to hit some sensitive topics for health, but also a way to reinforce some of the learning that takes place during class. Some of our class sizes are very large at the middle school level here in Frederick County. So we do have to use that time sometimes to be able to really work with those smaller groups or the one-to-one instruction that's needed. So it's a nice way to kind of follow back up with students. And then making sure that, homework's all over the place. Some schools do it, some schools don't. But our teachers have been using, like I said before, our Schoology platform, so they can send assignments home that way. And students can reinforce what they just learned in class or continue to work on those things.
And one thing, that I just thought about that we haven't mentioned yet is not all schools have this flexibility, but in our middle schools, when we have an inclusive class, what we're referring to is the fact that we have students who are general ed working on grade level. We have a mixture of students who are adapted, receiving those resources. And then we have students who are receiving significantly modified. That's a lot of resources, a lot of different learning needs. And so what those classes have done is oftentimes when they come to health, they might have small groups that go out of the room. So generally our gen ed students and then students who need adapted materials stay together in the classroom all at the same time, because those materials look very much the same, kind of like when we think back to the shoes. We have the tennis shoes and we have the shoes with both of them with laces. They look the same with slight differences. So they're really able to still learn and access and work together. But then when you have students that have significantly modified, sometimes it's just very difficult to go over that material and make it meaningful. But the inclusion is still super important. So it's not that those students all go to a separate room from the very beginning. They come together, they all talk about the topic together, they do a warm up, they interact. And then just like you would in a classroom for any other academic area, they go out for small group learning. And that's where they can work on the significantly modified material, have that small group, sometimes a less stimulating environment. If there's not so many people talking or just a smaller classroom, maybe the library, they go over that together, they do their activity, and then either they come back into the health room or we've had students that then go to them and they do a closure together, whether it be a activity, a physical activity, they look at their materials together, they review it with them, and then they leave class together. So that's an option too that has worked really well with a lot of our schools who have a significant group of students who just need an alternate location to access that material. And that's okay. But like I said before, still giving them the opportunity for inclusion and working together as best and most they can before going and having that small group opportunity. Is there anything else, Em, that you want to talk about class structure that's worked well?
We do have health teachers that say, I can't teach them. So we do run into roadblocks. It does happen pretty much every year, especially as teachers change at schools. And for us, programs change and students change. So I was just at a middle school yesterday having a discussion about students not being able to access health class and what we were going to do with them. What was our alternate plan going to be so they could still earn grades and still get content and be productive during that 47-minute class. So a lot of times, Liz and I have to get creative to come up with ways to support schools and teachers with that. So it's okay to not have everybody in your class the whole time. That's okay. And here we kind of compiled everything onto one slide so that you could see what a unit looks like. We've showed you all of these different things for a variety of skills that we talked about in different units. But here we took the healthy eating unit. There's a vocabulary list here that shows all the different words that we have. And that may change. We might add and reduce things. We're talking about the core boards, which are the visuals that we looked at earlier. And we learned from some of our communication-based programs that they use these a lot. So we were encouraged, and with the support of some of those teachers to create these, we were asked to be kind of consistent with what they were doing. So we have all those ready. And then the next thing that comes out is the general ed materials that are put together. Most of the time, these come in our county from central office staff. There may be other teachers doing curriculum writing. There's lots of activities and resources here. And it's usually pretty wordy on a plain white piece of paper with no visuals. That's typically how we know it's a general ed lesson. And we've talked a lot about ways to make a lesson adapted or modified still somewhat look like this. Sometimes it's doable. Sometimes it's a little bit more tricky. But again, a lot of words and a lot of just a white background here. Then as we get into the adapted lessons, there would be an increase. And the first thing I always say, Liz, what's there going to be an increase in?
Pictures.
There's yeah, that's like our first go-to. And I think that is because we have a ton of students who use communication devices and their learning comes from those pictures. That's how they're communicating. So if we're able to provide pictures, hopefully that helps their learning and meeting them where they need to be. So pictures and short videos are usually very helpful for students to see as an adapted activity, but they're still going to have the same main content that we had on that general ed lesson where we're talking about the different food groups here. They're going to identify a fruit. So drawing circles. If this was printed, they would just draw circles. If you're using it on a Promethean board or a box slate or a Chromebook, they could move those circles around to identify what those fruits were. Could do the same thing here with the vegetables, moving those circles around or circling. Sometimes we have students who are not able to make a circle. So Liz, what could we do if we have a child who can't do that? Their fine motor skills are difficult.
We love the daubers. So if you like to play bingo, those are a great thing to bring in for students to mark. You can still see through them, so they can still see the pictures behind, but it gives a nice circle print. and helps them identify and mark those answers.
It's less fine motor involved in that one. So another version of the adapted lesson, first thing that's going to pop up is always going to be pictures, most of the time, I would say, on our resources. And there's a short video about how eating foods can affect your gut. And then as you go through, there's going to be worksheets. There's going to be more visuals and activities for students to do. So we tried to make things printable and make it so you could either circle or draw something. So putting a green circle over foods that provide the most nutrition, yellow over a medium food, and then red over a food with the least nutrients. You can see that this is a little bit easier than what that initial assignment was, where we had the whole worksheet there, 2 pages typed up of the different activities. But there's still a good amount of words on that document to help with instruction. So this is a version of the modified activity. The lesson looks the same as the adapted one that we had, but it has less words on it. So you're able to do a warm up and ask the neighbor what they ate and look at the visuals and less words. So a lot of times with our modified activities, there is an adult reading the words or maybe a peer buddy, but sometimes we have students that can't read. So we do try to help their learning through pictures. And then as you go through this presentation, there are less images. So what we did was we reduced the choice options to make it easier for a student to choose what a fruit was or what a vegetable was. And then here we have a food journal. And again, bingo dabbers are fantastic. So they could be used. This could go home. This could stay in class. And there's a picture of a fruit, vegetables, protein. And you're simply just asking the child, did they eat that food? So their answer might be yes, and maybe they didn't eat it. That's okay. They're still answering the question. And for this to be done with general ed students, I think we would all agree that they're going to be writing out what they ate. But here, we're just trying to find out, did they eat things from different food groups? Are they able to maybe identify that a banana is a fruit and they had a banana for breakfast? So a very easy way. Well, this one's talking about lunch, but if it was the whole day, it would be an easy way for them to track what they're eating. So it's a nice way for teachers to have a resource. This stuff could be swapped out pretty easily. The visuals are all there. The student they could even use a highlighter, crayon, whatever it might be, lots of different ways. If they're not able to, draw a complete circle, that's totally okay. So now that we've shared a whole unit, Liz is going to wrap us up and kind of go over how we like for this to work out.
So when we go through an entire unit, and something that we take pride in and we really try to stress to our teachers is, while yes, we're here to teach health or PE, we have a wonderful opportunity for cross-curricular options. Many of our students who come to us with these significant needs are working on communication or fine motor, gross motor. It all depends on their specific needs. But our academic area can really bring in all of those. We can do counting. How many fruits did you eat this week? We do reading, having those vocabulary words. And even if they're repeating what you're saying and you're pointing to it, those are great opportunities for students. And obviously writing. And when we say writing, this could mean many different things. Some of our students are using pen and paper, pencil and paper, hopefully, but writing might also be talk to text. It might be using an iPad. It might be sequencing with picture words. So depending on the student, that is an opportunity for cross-curricular when you bring that into your health lessons. It's also a great place for decision-making and self-regulation. These are things that our students struggle with to begin with, and health and talking about decision-making, which is one of our skills-based health areas, is super, super important. So teaching them how to make good, positive decisions within their health can also carry over to positive decisions in school and things that they're doing in class. And also with that self-regulation piece. There's so many wonderful opportunities in the health curriculum that we can bring into class and help them in other areas of school. So once again, we talked about it earlier, it's really important to collaborate with special educators or the paraeducator on their academic goals and learning levels, because then you can do a little embedding of that material into health. And also work with your OTs, find out what those fine motor needs are. So all of the resources that we said we have electronically are also able to be printed, and students can work on fine motor, whether it's writing, coloring, cutting, gluing, pasting, all sorts of different things. If you do a hands-on activity and they're actually touching and manipulating and moving materials, great opportunities while being fun for the students. And those tend to be some of the most meaningful and memorable lessons that our students have. So once again, adapted health, we could go on forever talking about the importance. If your students aren't getting it, please advocate for them to be in your class. There are so many materials and resources out there. We are willing to help anybody and everybody with this because we find it so important. No student should go without an opportunity to access health education in order to better make decisions for their own health, their own lives, and then those around them and their families. So please take time to collaborate with others. Work with us if you want to. Give us a call. There's our work phone numbers. You can call and text us, email us. But once again, collaborate with others. Talk about health education. Get help with those adapted and modified resources, and just give opportunities for students to access at their learning level. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate your interaction, and let us know if we can ever do anything for you. Thanks.